You can tell a lot about how an election's going to go by the advertising during the final week. In a normal year, where the polling is close and either party has a chance to come out in power, the last week advertising is, well, you know what it looks like. They drag out every scare tactic and every personal attack in the book. They fire every arrow until the quiver is empty, the entire routine. But if it's the last week of an election and one party's advertising all of a sudden takes on the tone of, I'm willing to work across the aisle, and I've stood up to my own party. Well, that is a campaign operative's fun way of saying, oh shit, we're about to take a major league ass kicking here. When you're doing the work across the aisle, stand up to my own party dance, that is an implicit admission at the national level, at the top of the party. Because the candidates didn't all independently decide at the exact same time to do the exact same thing tactically, that we're just trying to limit the damage at this point. We know this thing is going to be a bloodbath, so it's time to try and just make it as little of a bloodbath as possible. And hope we can at least hold on to most of our super safe seats, or what used to be our super safe seats. If you're a sentient individual, not suffering from acute brain damage, who's been an observer of U.S. politics for longer than 5 minutes, which I know you are, you don't need me to tell you there are two things that will make the American electorate pick the ruling party up by the scruff of its neck and chuck it out the door. One is energy shortages, and the other one is crime. The last time the Democrats controlled every lever of government and screwed the pooch this badly on energy policy and law enforcement policy, it was 1980. And the Dems managed to hold on to the Congress, but they didn't see the inside of the White House for 12 years after that. And don't let any fake revisionist historian asshole try to tell you that election was a referendum on the Iran hostage crisis, because it wasn't. It was a referendum on the prior 40 years of big government socialism and gas prices and hyperinflation and violent crime. If anything, the hostage crisis was a wild card issue in that election that just made matters worse for the Democrats. But there's one of those this year, and it's much worse. It's called the Kung Flu, because this election is also a referendum on 2 years of maniacal, unhinged public health fascism, none of which was scientifically justified and which harmed pretty much every single person in the country in one way or another. It was only after Bill Clinton came along in 92 and said, guys, if we ever want to win again, and we do, because I really would like to have my way with a fat intern in the Oval Office, then we need to drop all the New Deal Great Society nonsense. One, because it failed, and two, because people freaking hate it. And that helped, to be sure, but Clinton didn't win in 92 just because he reinvented the party's messaging. He also won because Ross Perot was nice enough to come along and break off a big 19% chunk of the popular vote that would have delivered the election otherwise to George Bush the Elder. Today's president, such as he is, he thinks he has got a rockin' good idea for how to bring his party back from the brink of midterm ignominy. He's going to save the day by giving another dark Brandon Hitler speech. Since the last one was so very well received. And what a great insight into the mind of Joe Biden this is. A man who owns the distinction of having been wrong about every political question, foreign, domestic, and outer space, of the last 50 years. So when a man with a track record like that and a 36% approval rating offers to ride to the rescue, you fall on your knees and thank the good Lord that man exists. I guarantee you, when Joe Biden thinks about energy prices or inflation or the fact that we've got 3 weeks of diesel left in the country, he views those things as issues that have been imposed upon him externally. It would never occur to him that because he shut down the pipelines and ripped the beating heart out of the energy sector as his first order of business on his first day, that's why gas is $6 a gallon. It would never occur to him that the streets are crawling with vagrants and criminals because he threw open the border and supports insane policies that result in more violent felons being on the street, because that's not how people think who have had their minds warped beyond recognition by an entire life spent in government. When you ask Joe Biden to list his accomplishments as president, have you noticed this? First, he scoffs at you like it's the most offensive question he's ever heard, and then he says some version of, well, we've done more than any... There's no administration that's done more than we have, Jack. We passed this gigantic spending bill and this gigantic spending bill and this gigantic spending bill. So how can anybody say we haven't accomplished anything? You need to do your homework, fella. I get tired of this malarkey. So in Joe's mind, he is a great president because he has spent more money than all previous presidents combined. And if things aren't going well, then that's because of Republican treachery and corporate greed, obviously. And Vladimir Putin. Hey, Jim Eagle, how do you say hit the music in Russian? Here, hold on, I'll look it up. Poratsi Chertovu Muziku. That's the ticket. Wait, hold on, this is strange. I just got a pop-up from Google that says your anti-Ukrainian subversive activity has been logged and reported to the Department of Homeland Security? Wonder what that's all about. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I have been instructed by these nice gentlemen in the black suits to say that I fully support the Ukrainian freedom fighters in their noble and righteous struggle against the Russian aggressor. Will you put the gun down now? Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And we were talking a moment ago about how when you're a guy like Joe Biden and you've spent your entire adult life living in the world of fantasy and make-believe called the national government, it doesn't have the result of promoting a whole hell of a lot of self-awareness. So when you enact a policy and it makes the whole world go to hell, where a normal person in the real world would say, well, if I did A and then B happened and I don't like B, then I fix it by I don't do A anymore. In the mind of a career politician, it's more like if I did A and B happened and I don't like B, then C, I need to get Congress to pass a massive spending bill to address the catastrophic effects of my wrong-headed policy. And I think you can see that mental defect in his decision to give this speech that he's giving tonight. I think he's giving it right now as I sit here recording this. That first speech, the one in Independence Hall, the one with all the blood-red floodlights and uncomfortably fascist imagery, that speech is probably the worst thing that has happened for the Democrats in this election cycle. Well, that and the fact that the guy at the White House comms department can no longer call up his buddy at Twitter and say, yeah, there's this story that just dropped that's really bad for the party, so we're going to need you guys to banhammer that thing good and hard right now, okay? Thanks, bye. And talk about the worst of all possible worlds for the Democrats. They figured out how to thread the needle in the election 2 years ago that they had no business winning and somehow won anyway, allegedly. All it took was a massive global pandemic, rewriting all the election laws, and having the ability to censor on command any unwanted information from every major social media platform. You pull out any block from that Jenga tower of awfulness, and these guys are freaking screwed, and they know it. We're sitting here otherwise, halfway through Trump's second term, gas is still $3 a gallon, inflation is non-existent, there's no proxy war with Russia, there's no botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, there's no open border, no crime wave, none of it. And Elon Musk, to his credit, he's the guy who pulled out that Jenga block. And he paid $44 billion for the privilege, so it's already looking pretty bleak for the Democrats. And then less than 2 weeks out from the election, they lose that ability to use Twitter as a cudgel for silencing their critics. Now, I am a big fan of poetic justice, and that bit of justice is very poetic indeed. And yes, I do hear what you are muttering under your breath right now. You're saying, but Captain, what about industrialized vote fraud? Can't the Dems just flood the zone with fake ballots and steal the thing like they totally didn't do last time? Well, that's why it is extremely important for voters to vote. Because if you're a long-time viewer, you already know Curmudgeon's first law of elections. You can't steal a landslide. Only close elections can be stolen. No matter how many means the fraudsters have at their disposal, if everything goes just right, you can steal an election that's 51-49. You can't steal an election that's 55-45. It can't be done, at least not discreetly enough to actually pull it off. So the absolute worst thing that Republicans and conservative independents can do is to get overconfident and apathetic and accept the trends and think the thing is in the bag, and therefore be less diligent about showing up and voting, which you should do, frankly, if you have the option. You should do it the old-fashioned way. We need to unbuild this world of universal mail ballots and drop boxes on the side of the street and all those other things that were supposed to be, you remember this, sing it with me, temporary public health measures just for the 2020 election. Because did we ever have the slightest inkling of a doubt that they were lying about that? And they had every intention of making all that shit permanent? No, we did not. Secure elections matter. If elections are not secure, governments are not legitimate. Mail ballots and drop boxes do not promote election security. They retard it, quite badly in fact. And this is not a subjective argument. These are demonstrable, verifiable facts about the world that are supported by every scrap of data that exists on the subject. If you want to have the securest possible election, then you want to promote in-person voting on election day. There are very few credible reasons why a person needs to vote 1 month or 6 weeks early. If you know you're going to be out of the state, out of the country, off the planet, whatever, then please make your petition and they will be considered on a case-by-case basis. I was in some comment thread the other day, and the topic of the thread was how this judge in Arizona just told this group that they are allowed to monitor public ballot drop boxes. And there was a troll in this thread saying just what you would expect a troll to say, that this is white supremacists trying to intimidate voters of color and discourage them from participating in our democracy. So I asked the troll, is there some reason why these voters of color to whom you refer can't simply go vote at their polling place on election day rather than using some ballot drop box on a street corner in the middle of the night? And you know what the troll said? The troll said, well, Republicans have shut down so many polling places in minority neighborhoods, they don't have any choice except to use the drop boxes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been arguing with people on the internet for just about 25 years now, so it really takes a lot for a troll to amaze me, but this troll amazed me. It's one of those moments where you can't help taking a step back and just marveling at the overwhelming power of partisan tribalism, that people can believe such preposterous things and twist themselves into such absurd pretzel shapes to justify things that are self-evidently designed to make elections less secure and more easy to steal, because that is what drop boxes do. That is what mail ballots do. That is what early voting does. That is what ballot harvesting does. Moreover, another hallmark of secure and legitimate elections is when the result is announced on election night. Instead of the routine they do here in California where you just suspend the counting for 18 hours or so and the Democrats come up with 47,000 of the 46,000 votes they needed to win. Oh, and speaking of close elections, they just had one of those in Brazil. And if you're a Brazilian YouTuber, you are forbidden from questioning the veracity of that result. Isn't that fun? Because when a lady from San Francisco who got her job because she once rented a garage to the guys who founded Google, when she gets to decide what views you are allowed to have about your own country's affairs, isn't that great? You know, for as much as woke leftists love to decry the evils of colonialism and imperialism, what the hell do you call this, Susan? Should we all just get used to living in a world where if any left-of-center candidate defeats any right-of-center candidate anywhere in the world, you have to enthusiastically accept that result on pain of being deplatformed? Americans get to decide what Brazilians are allowed to think? That's where we are now? And that's somehow not an act of imperialism? Because somebody at YouTube HQ will have to explain that one to me. I am not following the logic. And look, I don't want to come off sounding like I am speaking on behalf of Brazilians, but that being said, we all damn well know that if Bolsonaro had defeated Lula instead of the reverse happening, YouTube would not give two squirts of piss about anybody questioning or rejecting that result. Political censorship is shameful and evil. And when you're not allowed to ask fair questions about the mechanisms of democracy in your own damn country, when you're not allowed to be skeptical of a result, irrespective of whether you have good cause for said skepticism, whether the banhammer is being wielded by a government or a private entity, then what's happening is an affront to freedom, an affront to pluralism, an affront to justice, and an affront to the human intellect. Brazilians never voted for Susan Wojcicki to be their minister of truth. So what gives her the right to insinuate herself into that position? What gives any American the right to silence any Brazilian for his views on the affairs of his country? Do we want U.S. internet companies run by rabid leftist ideologues running the political conversations in other places? Because I sure as hell don't. We're a country that is supposed to value free speech and open elections and a vibrant public discourse. Whatever moral authority we possess as a nation, we have gained it by attempting to uphold and export those same principles, up to and including by force of arms. There are hundreds of thousands of our best young men who lie buried on European fields of honor who can tell you all about that. But these days, our billionaire industrialists, they don't seem to export anything but the iron fist of censorship. Is that how we want to look to the rest of the world? The country that tells you what you're allowed to say on the internet and threatens to withhold your foreign aid if you don't wave the rainbow flag and open a transgender clinic for the kiddies? I don't want to be that country. That country is monstrous and evil and antithetical to the things for which it claims to stand. I want us to be a country that stands up for the right of every citizen in the world to question his country's leaders in any manner he sees fit without the risk of recrimination. I want us to be a country that doesn't meddle in other people's elections. I thought foreign election meddling was supposed to be bad. It seems to me like we are just as imperialist now as they ever accuse us of being in the past. We just use more subtle means to accomplish the same ends now. We want to put our thumb on the scales in some foreign election? Well, there's no need for the CIA to assemble a squad of subversives. There's no need for any direct government involvement at all. You just gotta call up Wojcicki and Zuckerberg and politely ask them to do the dirty work for you. But you don't try to call Twitter anymore because you'll just get a recording of Elon Musk laughing at you. Bless his heart. Now, according to the best prognostications, such as they are, and I think you all know how much I trust pollsters, the Republicans are going to wind up with something like 53 or 54 seats in the Senate and a 30-something majority in the House. I think, if anything, that's probably a best-case scenario for the Democrat side, because every day the pollsters, even the reliably Democrat-leaning pollsters, keep moving seats that were once safe Democrat into the toss-up column. But what the hell do I know? Maybe Joe Biden's second Hitler speech will make everybody forget about what a terrible president he is. Maybe it'll have the opposite effect that his first Hitler speech had. And I mean, who am I to argue with Joe Biden? Anyway, I am not the professional politician that he is. But I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Thank you, good people, very much indeed for watching. Please remember that super, ultra, mega, MAGA Republicans are very, very bad and they want to eat your children. I will see you Friday. Have a pleasant tomorrow. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.